I need to beat myself up to learn. I have to punish myself by bringing up my mistake and beating myself over the head with it over and over and over again until I finally get it in my thick skull not to do that again. Because the more I suffer, the less likely I am to forget. That is how many of us, myself included, are taught to deal with our mistakes and our guilt and shame around them. We're encouraged to use guilt and shame as tools to beat ourselves up so that we don't make the mistake again. And while some amount of this can be very useful and some form of appropriate punishment can be very helpful, for those of us who struggle with our mental health, we can often take this a step too far and end up constantly punishing ourselves far more dramatically than anything we've ever done needs or warrants. And also, we can continue this punishment long after whatever we've done has already been resolved. And we do this because we feel like I have to punish myself in order to learn. It's this false hope that the more I suffer, the more likely I am to remember. But there's a huge flaw with this strategy. It doesn't work. People change only because they want to, not because they've been forced to. Real change is a result of a positive choice rather than a negative reaction to something. If you're going into the new year carrying a lot of shame and guilt about your previous mistakes, then this video is going to be for you. The new year is a time of fresh energy and new beginnings, and you've got a lot of cultural and spiritual energy behind you to start making a new change and make 2026, or whatever year you're watching this in, the new year for you to really let go of a lot of that guilt that you might be carrying and step forwards and be a new you and live a life in a way that is more embodied of the values that you have now learned through making those mistakes and that you're not going to repeat again. I'm going to take you through a short process of gathering up any guilts that you'd like to let go of, helping you reflect on them and honor them and accept them by giving them the appropriate reflection and care, and then we're going to be able to let them go so that next year you can be more free of that weight and have a lot more energy to actually embody who you really want to be. Let's start by looking at guilt and shame. Guilt is a feeling we feel when we don't live up to our own standards. Guilt can be very helpful because it shows that we recognize that we've done something wrong and that we feel bad about it, we want to make amends, and then we want to change and do something differently. And this is the part of us where it can be helpful to have some form of punishment or consequence so that we learn and we also feel like we've been punished for it so that now we can move on because we've atoned. Shame is taking that punishment and beating yourself over the head with it until your whole body tightens up and all you can think about is how you'll never be good enough again and you just become paralyzed. So if you get stuck thinking the same thought loops over and over again, why did I do that? God, I'm so stupid. Oh, I wish I hadn't done that. What is that person thinking about? What's going to happen to me when this comes out? You're stuck in a shame spiral, and it's shame that is keeping you there. The only way to deal with shame is to face it head on. Shame cannot exist where there is light. But this is very tricky for two reasons. The first is that shame is painful, and we don't want to feel shame, so we avoid it, we push it away, we distract ourselves. Because actually facing the shame means that we actually have to take accountability for what we've done, and we actually have to change and be better and be different. And we might just not be ready for that, and that's also okay. And there's also a part where we could possibly be almost addicted to regulating ourselves in a really poor way by just constantly leaning into that shame. And we don't know any other way of being other than just leaning into all of that worry and having it overwhelm us because we feel like that's the safest thing to do and the place to be. And that's the second point, which is that If we do know that it's helpful to face shame, we might overdo it and throw ourselves right in the deep end into the absolute worst of it. And that's not actually a kind or an effective way of doing it, because it might seem like we're trying to take positive action, but actually by doing so much, we're going to hurt ourselves again. And actually, it's another form of self punishment. So we need to be really careful not to fall into either of these two extremes of overly avoiding it or overly leaning into it, because none of them are kind. And the only way out of shame is through kindness. Kindness to yourself in the form of self compassion and acceptance. Self compassion comes from actively choosing to be kind to yourself, even when you don't feel like it, especially when you don't feel like it, because you are the only person who is constantly with you. And if you're not nice to you, who else is going to be? When it comes to shame over making mistakes, the most effective self compassion tool I've found is reframing everything you've done as necessary. Everything you've done up until now has been necessary to make you who you are. It is reality, so you might as well accept it. It has happened. It is what is. There's nothing you can do about that. And part of you might come up and go, oh, well, I shouldn't have done that, and that should have gone a different way, and I really ought to have not have done that. But, as the saying goes, if you could have, you would have, but you didn't, so you can't. Accepting that you couldn't have done any better is actually really freeing. It feels like it's going to be the worst thing in the whole world, but humbling yourself and realizing I am a flawed human being, I make mistakes, and that's okay, actually is incredibly freeing. And the moment that you allow yourself some acceptance for the fact that you've cocked up in the past is helpful. There's lots of ways to actually go about this. 12-step programs have a whole system for it. One way I have found is very helpful is writing a list of all the things I feel a lot of shame and guilt about, and writing it down in a lot of detail, like who I hurt, when, why, how, and then asking myself the question, how did I feel back then? And when I was doing this, I started writing and I thought, I was angry, I was afraid, I was really anxious. And as I was doing that, I realized just how fragile and miserable I was and how much I was suffering. And it was only by doing that that I realized that I took actions that I didn't like. But I was also coming from a place of so much hurt. And now, when I look back on that, I can give myself some compassion for that very difficult place I was in where I made those choices that I wouldn't make again now. Because at the end of the day, when I look back at my poor younger self, he didn't know any better and he is just trying to do his best. And that self compassion is a really important part. But I do know better now. And none of it really means anything if I'm not acting now in a better way. And so, as well as feeling compassion for yourself, you need to choose now to be different, because that is how you atone for your mistakes and you really get to let them go. So, if there is an amend you need to make that amend. If there is a consequence you need to face that consequence. Now is the time to do it. There is no better time. And it is also never too late to try and be better. When you are doing this, other people might not want it, so you need to factor that in. But if you feel like you need to do it for you, then do it, because you are doing this for you. People might not want your apology. People might not even want to necessarily give you the consequences of your behavior. That doesn't matter. You're doing this for you. It is an inherently selfish act, but that selfishness is again that self-compassion, because now you are making amends for what you've done and you're taking new action to rectify it and be different in the future. If I give a personal example, in my relationships, my romantic relationships previously, I've been very needy and controlling. And in doing this, I have hurt the people that I was with. And I had to really stop dating, reflect on myself, make my list, feel awful about how I have shown up in previous relationships, feel compassion for myself for how I was, and then start healing. And it is only in that full process am I able to start feeling better. And I'm in the stage now where, obviously, the work is never done, but I'm in the stage now where I just embody a better version of myself. I am so much more secure. I am so much kinder. I am so much more chill and loving in my relationships because I found that within myself. And I've got my amends list, which is an ongoing piece of work, but I show up as a better person for my relationships, romantic or otherwise. And it's in doing that that I now embody the change I want to see in the world, which balances out how I have potentially been in my past. So you cannot undo the past, but you can commit today to not making the same mistakes and to living in a way such that you encourage yourself and others not to make those same mistakes as well. And finally, I want to share a reminder that shame is normal. Even the most healed and enlightened people still feel shame, they still make mistakes, they still feel guilty, and that is good. Confidence doesn't come from our successes, it comes from surviving our failures. Every bad thing you have done has crafted you into who you are today. Sure, if you had the awareness that you have now, maybe you wouldn't have done some of that stuff, but you didn't. But it is only because you have done those things that you do have the awareness today and you are able to be different now. So remember, the next time that you feel stuck in shame over what you might have done, be kind to yourself. It is all necessary. It has happened. It is reality. Accept it. This is you. And remember how you feel when you were doing it. And be kind to yourself for that. And then think now about how you wish you had acted differently and what you can do now to act differently. And lean in to being that better version of yourself with that constant self-compassion and that constant desire to be better, even though you're always going to be imperfect and you're always going to feel shame. And that is totally okay. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, then please hit like and subscribe if you'd like to see more content like this. Take care, and I will see you again soon.